Tesla is closing in on unsupervised full self-driving. And Rivian, while they started a few years later, is advancing very quickly on their own self-driving tech. But if you think that software is the only thing keeping your Tesla or Rivian from driving you home while you text or read a book, think again. In this video, we're going to talk about what stands between where we are now and that unsupervised dream. Spoiler alert, it's not the AI. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Mike, you're watching Thunderbolt Auto, and in this one, we're talking about the barriers that are keeping us from having that self-driving dream where we just hop in the car, we do whatever we want to do, and we arrive at our destination. If you're like me and you enjoy talking car tech and EVs, hit subscribe because there's a lot more where this came from. But before we get too far into talking about the tech and exactly how self-driving happens, let's set a baseline and discuss briefly the SAE levels of autonomy. As a brief recap, level 2 is what Rivian and Tesla have right now. Level 3 is unsupervised, but you have to be in the driver's seat. And level 4 is unsupervised, no one in the driver's seat, but in a limited geographical area. And while we're talking about level 4 autonomy, we can't not talk about Robotaxi and Waymo and all of these other self-driving taxi services. If these exist and it's on the same hardware that people currently own, why can't owners of vehicles have the same full self-driving experience without that supervision? Well, there's a couple of reasons for it. And I think one of the biggest reasons is the geographical locked area. These robotaxis operate in some certain cities like San Francisco, Austin. From what I hear, they're actually starting to operate in Miami as well. And if there's something common you notice about all of these cities that they're operating in, they're all what we would consider to be mild weather areas. And that actually makes a difference. You don't really see robotaxis operating in places like where I live in Utah or in New England, where there's potentially heavy weather conditions in the winter, and it can get kind of dicey for these self-driving sensors. But I don't think that hardware limitation is really going to be playing a major factor in the long term. Both Tesla and Rivian have been seen testing their full self-driving tech in states with harsher weather conditions. In fact, here in Utah, I've seen a cybercab under testing. And there's a lot that's going into it. Rivian is putting in things like LiDAR and radars, but that's a different topic for a different video. Needless to say, I don't think that's going to be a factor for a long time. However, there is another part that I think not a lot of people are talking about, and we'll come back to it. First, I want to talk about a system that not a lot of people know exists or talk about, and that's Mercedes Drive Pilot. In a nutshell, Mercedes Drive Pilot is a level 3 system that is unsupervised. It is extremely limited though. There's a lot of conditions that have to be met. It's only available on certain highways that are in California and Nevada. It has to be on a sunshiny day during daylight hours, and it has to be during heavy traffic scenarios where you're going 40 miles an hour or less. So there are a lot of asterisks, but the precedent has been set. There is a self-driving level 3 unsupervised system out in the wild today. So we need to talk about why no one else is doing this, including Tesla or Rivian, which have much more capable systems. Well, I think there's a few reasons for that. One is owner expectations. Everyone is very excited about the possibility of being able to just zone out on their way to and from work and not even think about it. And having all of these asterisks just kind of gets in the way of that experience. That's not what people want. It's very much well, technically it is level 3, but also no, because anything outside of that very specific set of parameters, it's a level 2 system that you have to be supervising anyway. So what difference does it make? But the other barrier that I think is honestly the more important one that no one talks about is liability. Who's taking responsibility for what the car does? And in this case, it's Mercedes. Mercedes takes full liability over everything that vehicle does when it's in that state. And I think that's partially why it's such a limited set of parameters that it's allowed to work under. It's relatively safe, and they're relatively confident that they're not going to have to pay out of pocket for the car getting into an accident. When you get into a full point-to-point self-driving system that is unsupervised, there's a lot more opportunities for there to be some sort of incident and some sort of problem that they're going to have to pay for. Robotaxi, although few, has had some of these incidents come up, and Tesla has had to pay for them on their vehicles. It becomes a lot more complicated when it's a vehicle that is owned by an individual, because it's not really fair for the auto manufacturer to make you, as the owner, pay for something that your car did when you weren't in control of it and you weren't paying attention. I certainly wouldn't want to pay for something that my vehicle did without my permission or knowledge. But at the same time, the automaker has to be able to make it make sense for them to take liability for all of these millions of vehicles potentially to suddenly start driving themselves and getting in these scenarios where there is potential for an accident to happen. And of course, no system is ever going to be perfect, though real world is far from perfect, and these incidents are going to happen. And that's where insurance comes to play. A lot of insurance providers that you personally have either won't want to cover what the automaker is doing, or if they do, they'll make you pay an extremely high rate for that same insurance you would have had for your car already. And this is where things get kind of complicated, and not a lot of people like to talk about it because it's messy and there's no really clear precedent for it yet. Although Mercedes has explicitly said that they take full responsibility for their vehicle while it's operating under Drive Pilot, it's very limited, and there aren't a lot of scenarios where we've seen how that actually plays out in the real world when an incident does happen. And this is where the future gets a little bit fuzzy. What will likely end up happening is car insurance companies will enter partnerships with the automakers themselves. And my guess would be in these scenarios, you'll be required to use this specific approved insurance while you're under that full self-driving that's unsupervised. And that's going to allow the automaker to take liability, but also work with an insurance partner that they know will cover adequately. And that can be kind of problematic in and of itself. That could create problems of a monopoly for an insurance provider. A lot of people have concerns about data collection for when they are driving and that influencing their insurance rates. And, it becomes a whole big rabbit hole of things that are yet to be solved. And alongside the liability issues, there's also legal concerns as well. Laws have to be updated in each municipality and each state to allow for these level 3 self-driving systems. I mean, just imagine you're driving through a small rural town and the police pull you over for texting and driving, even though you have a system that's capable of driving level 3 unsupervised. So technically, by that metric, you are allowed to be texting and driving, but maybe the local laws don't allow for that. And this is kind of where things can get even more muddled as well, because a lot of these states aren't necessarily going to feel comfortable with the technology, even though there's so many stats you can throw at them. There are things like redundancy. For example, with Tesla's vision-only system, even though it is incredibly robust and incredibly capable, take, for example, a piece of road debris comes up and smashes one of the cameras. Because there's no redundancy, that vehicle is completely blind on whatever section that was covering. And there are certainly ways around this. If the right side gets damaged, you could pull off to the left side of the road. And, there's lots of things that can be done, but the optics of it are what they are to lawmakers. And these laws have to be adjusted to allow for it as well. So it's a little bit messy, it's a little bit chaotic, and that's probably why people don't like to talk about it or even think about it. But in my opinion, I think that these are the bigger issues. I don't think that tech is really the biggest thing that's keeping us from this full unsupervised dream. It's a lot of the nitty-gritty liability, legal, and social stuff. So only time will tell what the future holds for this. But I can tell you one thing, both Tesla and Rivian are acutely aware of all of these issues, and they're working behind the scenes to make this a reality, because they would not be investing all of this money in tech only to be blindsided by the liability and legal issues. I'm very interested to see how this gets solved and how quickly it gets solved. And I'm curious to know your thoughts as well. Do you think this is something that's solvable in the near future, or do you think this is going to take years to become fully unsupervised? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe because we're going to be doing a lot more testing of these self-driving systems. And it's getting to be time for another road trip, so that'll be coming up in the next couple months. Until next time, thanks for watching. And if you're curious what a camera-only autonomy system would look like in a Rivian if they didn't have that extra layer of redundancy, you can check out this video right here where I actually covered up all of the radars with shop towels and aluminum foil to see how the system would behave.